This is the Brave New Coin Crypto Conversation, hosted by Andy Pickering.
Hi everyone, Andy Pickering here. I'm your host and welcome to the Crypto Conversation, a Brave New Coin podcast where we talk to the people building the future in the Bitcoin, blockchain and cryptocurrency space. Hello everyone, Andy Pickering here. Got a fun show for you today. Before we get into it, got to give a shout out to our new sponsor. Yes, we have a new sponsor, and that is Prime XBT. Yes, Prime XBT is an award-winning Bitcoin-based trading platform that offers access to over 50 assets, including crypto, forex, commodities, and indices. And to provide the highest level of liquidity, Prime XBT aggregates data from 12 industry-leading exchanges and data feed providers. Prime XBT offers high leverage. Yes, indeed, they go up to 100x on crypto assets and as high as 1000x in the traditional markets, and their interface is suitable for both professional and beginner traders. It's also home to a co-vesting platform which allows users to apply the copy trading strategies of the most successful professional traders. You want to learn more? Of course you do. Just check them out today at primexbt.com. And of course, I will make sure there is a link in the show notes. But for now, it is on with the show. My guest today is Bill Ottman. Bill is the co-founder and CEO of Minds, a leading alternative social network. Minds is building an open source and decentralized platform that shares revenue in the form of crypto payments with its community. Welcome to the show, Bill.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Let's just, I mean, a lot of people know who you are, but some won't. So I'd love for you to please begin by just giving a little bit of an introduction to yourself. Let's just hear a bit about your background building up to Minds.
Yeah. So, I mean, I've been doing Minds for a long time. Initially, even after I graduated from UVM, we started doing these live events / forums / festivals called Gathering of the Minds. And it was actually more of a live thing. And, social networks were sort of new back then. So it was sort of like a physical social network. That was great. I mean, we would sort of blend debate and entertainment and, bringing people from both sides of the spectrum on various different issues, debate them. Like one topic we covered at UVM was the university's investment portfolio in various weapons manufacturers. Most universities have allocations into these companies. And so we brought like student government and a lot of different groups together, had a huge debate, professors, administration, and ultimately it actually did lead to UVM divesting from companies like Raytheon and General Dynamics. So that was really interesting. And then we would have like live music at the end. And so it wasn't all just, heavy stuff, but eventually I was also a director at Gathering of the Vibes Music Festival, which doesn't happen anymore, but it would be like, 20, 30,000 people camping 4 days, art and music, a lot of like funk music, reggae, rock and roll. And that was in Connecticut. And so I've always been really fascinated by bringing people together. And then what happened is I really just got dosed on this whole idea of open source software, internet freedom. And because back in the day, I was honestly pretty crunchy up in Vermont and was almost like against I was always against what Facebook was doing, because while there are some valuable social organizing things that they've accomplished, and obviously there's some of it's amazing technology, but it's corrupt from the root. And so, but when I saw that there's this open source thing and like Linux and, Mozilla and Tor and, this was kind of pre-Bitcoin, pre-crypto. Then I just realized, okay, we can have a whole free internet that isn't in these silos and surveillance nightmares like Facebook. And so I knew that, okay, this is great. We can bring organizing to the web. I want to fully build the open source social network because, none of the big ones are open source. And that's kind of where it started. And then crypto came along, and we obviously wanted to integrate with that because it also aligns with what we care about.
Yeah, and just put this into context, Bill. So you talked about the meeting of the minds. What year did you actually launch the platform?
Well, we launched our first app in 2015.
Yeah.
But the company actually started in 2011.
Yes.
And then before that, we were doing the events. I mean, I worked at Gathering the Vibes in 2009, 2010. And then, I graduated in 2008. So there were sort of events happening like back in 2009 time frame.
That's right. And even so, right back then, I suppose compared to now, there's do you think it's fair to say there's much more awareness of, everything from, I guess, nation state spying to personal data manipulation, algorithm manipulation, and, the idea that if you're getting the product for free, you are the product. There's much more awareness of those kind of issues now, and yet it's still, I guess we're seeing some traction, and yet it's still really hard to kind of get user traction against the likes of Facebook or Google, even Twitter, right?
I think we're seeing huge growth in the digital rights space. More people are caring about their data sovereignty. They're taking, they're using encryption more. They're setting up crypto wallets. There's decentralized identity. There's the whole Web3 world that is happening, and that's great. But Web2 is very much still the dominant force. And, our initial growth phase was kind of when the Snowden leaks came out. We had a huge, our first 500,000 users back then. And that's really when it started. I mean, because I remember pitching Minds before that, and you could barely convince anyone that privacy mattered at all. Nobody cared.
Yeah, totally. Okay, so talk us through. Let's just understand how do you describe the Minds, I suppose, platform ecosystem, and I guess it's a revenue model, right? So there's kind of there's a few different moving parts here. So what's the kind of the high level understanding of how that works?
Yeah, I mean, the whole idea of Minds is to create a community-owned, community-powered network, and that includes sharing revenue. So we, the app feels very similar to Twitter, Facebook, YouTube.
Yeah.
But we have this wallet functionality, and we're basically airdropping tokens every day on the community for in this reward system that is composed of engagement rewards, holding rewards just for holding on chain, and also for providing liquidity. So we have an integration with Uniswap to directly facilitate that. And tokens are worth impressions or views. So one token will give you 1,000 impressions after you earn it, and you can boost your content to get more views. And we did that just because the algorithms are strangling everyone, and we want to help creators get more reach. We also proportionally reward liquidity providers with their share of the pool. So if you contribute to the Minds ETH pair on Uniswap and you have 1% of the pool, you're going to get 1% of the ad rotation at the top of the news feed. And so that's kind of this passive reward. It's basically free advertising for liquidity providers. And that's been amazing. And then we also have fiat as well. We have a whole Stripe integration, which is completely separate from the crypto, and they don't even touch each other at all. But we have a product called Minds Plus, which is our membership product. And Minds Plus members get access to this exclusive feed of content, but also the ability to post into that feed. And we take 25% of our Minds Plus revenue and proportionally share it with the creators who posted great content into there. and that's actually a cash rev share. So both are really interesting. I think that, you know, we really want to help onboard people into crypto, and, you know, having both makes it easier for people to digest at first, and then they kind of start exploring the token stuff. So does that make sense?
Yeah, it does, and it's fascinating, Bill, because you know, and I guess from one perspective, Minds is one of the first platforms to experiment with, you know, I guess a Web3 model, right, at some kind of scale. So if that's the case, you know, what have you found since you've introduced the Minds token and this new model? How has that affected user growth, or what kind of user metrics are you watching, you know, throughout the course of this year, I suppose, as we've seen the rise of, you know, concepts like the metaverse and Web3, and there's just a lot more interest in that now.
Yeah, I mean, we're over 5 million users now, but you know, a smaller portion of those tokens on chain. So we actually had a digital currency before we even moved to Ethereum, which was just a point system, a point reward system that was centralized. And when we launched our app in 2015, we had this. And so you would earn the points for various activity on the app, and then you could use the points to promote your content. So that was still the same. But then when Ethereum kind of matured, we just had so much demand from the community to move on chain and give people actual sovereignty over their tokens. And, you know, there's more decentralized infrastructure. So that was great. And more transparency on the usage. And so there are all these benefits. And we literally just, you know, migrated people's balances into token and converted into tokens. And so the off-chain system, and now we still have an off-chain token system, which doesn't require Web3 wallets or gas or anything. So that people who don't know about it can still start earning and get acquainted. And then when they want to pull tokens on chain, they can. So yeah, I mean, it's by far the most popular feature on the app, just because people like, you know, gamified products. They like to earn for what they're doing rather than just.
Yeah. Well, tell me then, Bill. So for the benefit of people that that aren't on Minds, but they're listening now, you know, if you're like, say you're a new user and you go to Minds, and you know, you want to start participating in the ecosystem, and you want to start posting content, right? And if I'm, you know, let's say I'm a power Twitter user now, I want to be a power Minds user. Can you give us a kind of a sense of how much time and energy or content generation, how much do you need to kind of put in to start earning, you know, not a significant amount, but, you know, more than dust, shall we say? Because one of the things is always, with Web3 models, it's always hard to get that balance between the super early adopters versus the new users, right? There's always a bit of a push and pull there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I would say, so for one, we actually did just launch a cross-posting tool from Twitter. So, and unfortunately, currently it's limited to people with 25,000 or more followers on Twitter because of the API quota. But that enables posts to just automatically go from Twitter to Minds, which makes it easier to maintain. We're going to open that up. I think they're opening their API quota. So we really want to open that up to everybody. But in terms of like earning quickly, the fastest way to doing it is to get into the liquidity pool, because the most rewards that we're dropping every day are going to liquidity providers. And so what'll happen once you enter the pool, let's say you do it for, you know, a couple $1,000, you know, you're not giving us that money. You're just staking your Minds tokens and Ethereum in, and then you're going to start earning tokens off chain. So they're just going to start daily appearing. You know, you might earn a handful of tokens a day, and then you can use those to boost all of your posts and get seen in the community. You'll also get that passive promotion that I mentioned earlier for being a liquidity provider. And then, you know, you'll start earning the engagement rewards on top of that once you start boosting your content and getting more visible. So you'll be earning some engagement rewards for like the upvotes and whatnot that you're receiving. So that's really the best way that I would recommend for people who don't really have pre-existing big audiences. And yeah, I think that, does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
And so we'll come back to some of this, Bill. And I also want to we'll dive into all the censorship stuff as well, because that's kind of key to this discussion. And man, that's a rabbit hole in itself. But I'm also fascinated. I think it was back in September that Minds, or it might have been you yourself. You led the announcement that Minds was converting 25%, I think, of your balance sheet. It wasn't not a huge sum of money, but 25% of your balance sheet, that's significant. So you're putting that into crypto assets. So maybe was it a quarter of your Series B funding round? I don't know. You better explain this, Bill.
Yeah, it was a 2.5 million, roughly.
Yep.
So definitely not a small amount. And then we actually, beyond that, put we increased that recently. We added another million after our last board meeting. So now it's actually increased since that Fortune article came out. But yeah, so I mean, for us, I mean, everyone knows sitting on cash, you're just losing cash. Why do you want to just let inflation steal your money? So we put basically roughly 50-50 into Bitcoin and Ethereum, and then we also are participating in the Circle yield program with USDC.
Yep,
we have like $1 million in there, and it's been amazing. I mean, it's just, and regardless of the volatility, volatility is good and bad. I mean, well, it's bad and good. You need volatility in order to have more dramatic growth. And we just believe in Bitcoin. We believe in Ethereum, and we want to participate in those ecosystems. We want to, have block space, as it's now being called. It's like, these are the assets of the future. And it just doesn't make sense to not participate. And I'm really hoping that what we did can spawn more startups, like early stage startups, to start doing this, because we hear about MicroStrategy, who's just putting
buying the dip. Yeah, whenever there's a dip, it's quite strange that you've got MicroStrategy doing it and El Salvador leading the charge to buy the Bitcoin dip. But yeah, keep going.
Yeah, no, it's great. And Tesla and Square, and and there are others who are doing it, but these are big public companies. I want to see more startups being vocal about doing this, because it's, you can really, I mean, there's risk, but you can subsidize your burn pretty heavily by being involved in Bitcoin and Ethereum. I mean, Bitcoin's like over 200% a year for its entire history. Like, that's pretty reliable. And there may be a year where it doesn't do that, or where it even goes down. But if you have the freedom and the balance sheet to protect yourselves, obviously, for enough, so you have enough runway. But yeah, it just seemed like a no-brainer, and I'm just so glad that our board and our team supported it, and people are willing to take chances on it, because I think it matters so much to migrate balance sheets and vote with your balance sheet. It could just have an incredible impact if it starts taking off more.
Yeah, look, I completely agree, Bill, but I suppose it's still such a hard leap for companies, even startups, if they aren't, I suppose, native crypto companies, or even native Web3 companies. There's always going to be, because you know how this works. You need to have the board approval, and any given board on a company that's outside of crypto, there's going to be a couple of people on that board who are just like, what, you want to put X amount of the balance sheet into crypto? That's just crazy. So it's just it's too much of a leap of faith for some people at this point. I don't know, how do we resolve that? How do we get past that? It's just an adoption cycle thing, isn't it?
I
It just
think
takes
that
time.
it's going to happen sooner than, I mean, it's happening is the thing. Like, I'm sorry, with all due respect to all of the crypto skeptics sitting on boards out there, but
Yeah.
I mean, Tesla, literally like one of the richest men in the world, put billions of dollars of Bitcoin onto Tesla's balance sheet. I mean, you can't ignore that. You have Tim Cook saying that he's holding crypto. You
Yeah.
have, just day after day, there's more institutions. I mean, look at what El Salvador is doing. It's, you can have fun being a skeptic, and like everyone should be critical and question these different strategies, but you got to be honest at the end of the day about where we think things are going. And if your company's values, some companies just they're not in this headspace. They don't care about open source, they don't care about decentralization or privacy. And but even from a selfish perspective, as an inflation hedge, I mean, that's hopefully how they can start thinking about it.
Yeah, at some point, it's just the numbers make sense because it is just math, Bill. But look, let's switch gears slightly. I just because since we've got you on the show in the hot seat, I think it'd be quite fun just to give you a chance to kind of. I'd love to get your opinions on some of the more centralized social networks and where you see them at the moment. So the likes of Facebook and Twitter, even Reddit. What are they doing right and what are they doing wrong? Facebook obviously there's this huge pivot to Meta. Twitter, Jack Dorsey just stepped down yesterday, and then already Twitter, I saw them announce today, I don't know if you saw it, that some new rule about not being able to post video or audio of other people without their consent. So yeah, there's a lot to dig into here. So I don't know.
Well, let's start with that one.
Sure.
That's today's breaking news. So it's just shocking. I mean, the day after Dorsey resigns, they come out with the announcement. People are already sort of suspicious that this could be bad for free speech on Twitter. And then the next day they say, if you post images or media of private individuals that they don't want on the platform, then they're going to take them down. I mean, and if you actually read their blog post about it, one of the justifications for this, they had the audacity to use the word dissidents, that this was something that was good for dissidents. And that is just so disingenuous to me, or confused, if, I don't want to assume bad faith. But dissidents need free speech. I mean, anyone who studies human rights knows that, free speech is what dissidents and authoritarian regimes want. So, the potential for abuse of this system with anyone who just doesn't want a photo of them online. I mean, you would think that we would have learned lessons from the last 20 years of the internet. I mean, it's going to be a disaster. And I don't know how you could ever fairly moderate that without making so many different mistakes and just differentiating between public figures and private figures. That line is now becoming so blurry, because it used to be very obvious who was a public figure and who was not. But now, just with social media, big creators, anyone who's on social media is public in a sense. So who is there a follower count that distinguishes a public figure from a private figure? I don't have any idea how they're not going to just be making arbitrary decisions on this. So, I guess I'll pause there.
Yeah, I agree. And do you get the sense that, in some ways, because obviously, we know Jack is very much a a Bitcoiner at heart, in the sense that not just a Bitcoiner, but a Bitcoin maximalist of the, the true and pure school. And, you got to give him credit for that. And given that he was sort of keeping Twitter, as I guess as kind of open and free as he felt, he was able to, given the kind of the pressures that would be on him from all sides. Do you get any sense as to what he'll do next, and why he would have kind of walked away, and which direction Twitter goes in now?
Well, I'm sure he'll just be focusing on Square and
Yeah.
Bitcoin more. And Square's doing a lot with Bitcoin. And, I would love to have a conversation with Jack someday, to really dig in a little bit, in total, like in full respect, because, he's a very confusing person to me, because there's so much great stuff that he's done, and he's clearly super smart and has built amazing companies. But there's this sort of deep hypocrisy that you really can't ignore. And maybe this is part of the reason that he left, because he felt like he was powerless to change these things at Twitter. But, Twitter started as the free speech wing of the free speech party. That was their slogan. And, it used to be totally crazy that, I mean, but in an important way. I mean, look, the internet is crazy. Like, and we can get into the free speech stuff and how we approach that as well. But, Twitter's not open source. Even their Bitcoin integration that they just rolled out is not open source. Like, how I could never imagine with a straight face launching a non-open source crypto product. I can't personally, and a lot of companies do this, and I'm just confused and continually baffled. So there's that. There's, the Twitter has just been, their content policy, even before this latest chaos today, has been really controversial. A friend of mine, Tim Pool, debated Jack on the Joe Rogan podcast, and along with their head of content moderation. And it was just a train wreck. I mean, they couldn't respond to anything that Tim was discussing for all of these bans that had happened. And, they let some people back on, but other people not back on. Like, there was this Bitcoin core developer, Luke something, who I had a conversation with the other day. So he got banned permanently. And then I was actually in a thread with Jack, sort of where I, that he saw it because it was a pretty big thread and they were talking about this. And somehow Luke got back on, even though he got the permaban notice. And good, I'm glad. I think people should be given as many opportunities to appeal and, have mistakes reversed, or, and just have redemption generally. But so, Luke got let back on. But why? When all of these other people aren't getting a second chance, it's just like there's no process there, and the rules are just so subjective. And I don't know what's going on internally. I did read one pretty interesting Wired article. I forget the name of it, a year or two ago. And it was talking about the sort of these internal wars happening in Twitter on the free speech issue, which are so blatantly obvious. I mean, you can tell that it's become very political. Unfortunately, free speech has become a very political issue over the last 5 years. And, when traditionally it's been very bipartisan, people understand that it's just an essential civil liberty, despite, some horrible speech that can bubble up. But, we've taken the stance that, hey, yeah, First Amendment has been very important for our country over the last, hundreds of years. And it's just the foundation of healthy societies generally. And this is why the ACLU traditionally would support the KKK, and not support the KKK, but defend their right to speech. And, they even still will defend having done that, though I think the ACLU has become a little bit more political as well. So anyway, I can pause there, but I think that there's just a lot of unknown. I feel like we're not being told the whole story.
Absolutely. And well, I guess this is a good point to start to get your feelings on, or understand how minds approaches the minefield that is, yeah, I mean, free speech, censorship, where do you draw the line, and so on. And I suppose to be, to put this in context, you guys have come under some fairly heavy criticism yourself for some of the content that appears on your platform, right?
Yeah, sure. I mean, look, what social network isn't?
Well, that's true.
I mean,
Yep.
the same, you can find all the same articles that have come out against Twitter, Instagram, Tumblr,
Facebook,
every
of course.
single one.
Yes.
You see these headlines that'll be like X social network has a, problem with Z, or like these types of problematic users. And so, look, I mean, the reality of censorship and the research around the impact of it is very clear. And this is what bothers me about the global discourse around this. So we partnered with Daryl Davis, who is a famous, heroic Black man who de-radicalized over 200 members of the KKK by befriending them and engaging in conversation.
Mm-hmm.
And so, and he does great multiple TED Talks that he's done.
Mm-hmm.
And so Daryl joined our team to help almost like digitize this strategy, because, and he helped us co-author this paper that we're going to be releasing in Q1 around the correlation between censorship, extremism, and violence, and how censorship can actually cause and does cause deeper polarization and in many cases violence. Because when people get censored, it causes this psychological reaction that pushes them much deeper into whatever it was that they were discussing about. They were discussing, and in every area. I mean, whether you're talking about, there was a study done on pro anorexia content on Tumblr, and this concept called the toothpaste tube effect, where you try to stamp it out in one area and then it just pops up on another. I mean, this is the nature of how networks work. This is network topology. You ban something on one platform, it just goes somewhere else. You're not making you can diminish a certain types of speech in an isolated system, but you cannot stop the ideas. So I like to think of the internet as much more of a community. I don't want to just ban people and make it some other network's problem. I mean, these are human beings, and that's what Daryl thinks. And I can promise you, Daryl has done more for de-radicalization and bridging the divide than any journalist whining about problematic content on social networks. He has actually created real change. And in order to create change, you need to be able to talk to people. And if you ban them, you cannot talk to them. So, that's a pretty basic, it's just simple physics. Like, I can't talk to someone if I ban them, and therefore I cannot de-radicalize them. So our hypothesis is that on the long term, we are going to result in a higher rate of de-radicalization than legacy social networks, because they literally by policy cannot de-radicalize, because they're just getting rid of people. So we have tons of research. We have multiple PhDs that have co-authored and kind of compiled all of the data around this topic. And this, because I am passionate about it, I'll admit, but I don't want this to just be like my opinion. Like, this should be a data-driven decision that social networks are making. Are we resulting in greater extremism and polarization or less through these various content policies? And are there more novel approaches that we can take to dealing with, there are malicious people on the internet. And I think that, we do ban people for, breaking the law and making threats. And, there's certain people who just aren't willing to play ball at all. And I totally understand that. But it gets into the appeals process and the process for redemption as well. So you're not completely cutting off. We have a jury system that we rolled out for our appeals process, so our community can actually vote on appeals. And there's a lot of new ways that we can be thinking about, rather than just the the simple like ban and don't worry about it anymore.
Yeah, and it's just so complex, and it's just, you know, I guess it comes back to the nature of politics and human nature, and if politics is so combative, that sort of feeds back to, left versus right and us versus them. And, what Rogan talks about, people pick a tribe and then you go online and fight for your tribe. And people, that they use kind of language and attitude that they wouldn't use in a face-to-face setting, but perhaps they can in an anonymous internet setting. But it feels like that will change as well, as with Web3, and I think maybe quite soon it'll become quite. We might look back on this time of using our real world identities online as kind of quaint. Do you think that's where we're heading?
I think it'll be both. Anonymity is an essential human right. Even the United Nations has come out directly and said this. I mean, there's people in certain countries where you literally cannot speak out under your own name without getting arrested. So, anyone who is arguing against anonymity because of trolls, like, okay, that's a valid issue. But when we're talking about the global right to anonymity, like, let's zoom out for a second and understand what's, kind of the most important problem, which is that. But, I do think that some people want to be public and want to know who they're dealing with, and others don't. But in reputation can be independent of identity. And yes. I think, there's absolutely interesting stuff happening in the decentralized reputation space with DIDs and a lot of projects. And we specifically are very focused on this because, spam sucks. And trolls, people should be accountable to a degree, but what we don't want is a centralized Chinese social credit score system. But, your behavior on networks, I do think, you should have the option to have that follow you around and bring your reputation with you, so that when you join, log into a different app or DApp, that, your how well you've participate on Aave, or how your followers, and what the sentiment, like, it can get dystopian pretty quick, so we have to be careful with it. But I think that having sovereign identity is essential, and I think people will want to, people would stand by their behavior for the most part. So yeah, I mean, this is one of the biggest things that is gonna help solve a lot of these issues that we're talking about with the toxicity. And you could choose, maybe when you log in, to Minds at some point, once we figure out this problem, that you only want to even deal with people who have a certain baseline reputation.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. And because I don't think it really is solvable to the extent that, humans are humans, and we all have good and bad moods and sides. And so it's for every Batman, there's a Joker. Some people just want to watch the world burn. And so I suppose one way of, maybe it's just you kind of you choose who you deal with. But it's fascinating, like on Twitter, some of the most insightful people in like the Web3 NFT space are completely anonymous. They just go by their NFT avatar. So you see a lot of this happening already. And so I love the example that you used. You could the next kind of step on from there is their on-chain behavior. Are they a good actor? And as you kind of accrue those reputation points, if you like, it becomes, you're just incentivized to keep that identity a force for good, if you like.
It's really, so complicated though. And, I talked to the guys at Bright ID. They're doing, proof of humanity. There's a lot of, projects working on this. But the thing is that, okay, if you have really great lending behavior and you borrow and always pay back your loans on, DeFi, okay, great. That's a data point. Okay, you're an actual human. Okay, that's a data point. But neither of those things actually determine if you're a good person or if you're not a troll. Like, you could have a great lending record, but be a total troll. You could be have all the proof of humanity that you want, but you still go into chat rooms and act like a jerk. So that sort of the more social component of the reputation is, I think, probably the hardest problem to solve. And like where that data is stored. And I think Snapshot is doing some amazing things with voting, and we're going to be rolling out a big Snapshot integration for gasless voting soon. And we also have been working on a whole fully decentralized version of the network on Ceramic, which is like a mutable layer on IPFS, and they have this whole decentralized identity system, which you can connect your crypto wallet to. It's still primitive though, and it's just going to take time. So I think that we just need to be patient, and patience is really the key. And I think that people are getting impatient about, the problems with speech and the problems with politics, and it's just causing irrational short-term decisions to get made, which I think are going to cause a lot of damage in the long term. When you just go banning people because they used a certain word, or they posted something about COVID or whatever it is that is just controversial, it's like that really affects people's lives. I mean, some people's livelihoods are dependent on their social media presence and following. And then you just rip that away just because they used a certain word, and there's no like legitimate process to fix that. I mean, even Pomp got banned, and he luckily was big enough to talk to the people at YouTube. But like he said specifically, that is not in the capacity of 99% of people to cause a huge fuss because they're huge on social media. If Pomp can get banned, are you kidding me? I mean, it's really honestly terrifying. And that's why it's so important for, people not to be reliant on any particular network. And so I just say, diversify, whether it's Minds or one of the other solutions out there, like back yourself up. Why are you trying to take risks? You never know. I mean, you could completely, to no knowledge of your own, say something that gets you banned. It's the AI is dumb, to be honest. It's just not sophisticated. It cannot detect nuance. There's the mods, a lot of them are probably political, and it's just, I wish we could have a more honest conversation about it. And that's what's ultimately frustrating to me. I feel like the big tech executives just won't have the conversation.
Yeah, that's really well said, Bill. And I love this idea of, just back yourself up, just in case the rug gets pulled out from under you. Let's go do a very quick break, and then we'll come back and we'll finish off. We'll have some fun. We'll do the very famous crypto conversation hot take round.
In today's crypto market, the team at Brave New Coin are the sector's leading builders of custom crypto indices. BNC's powerful indexing engine draws on Brave New Coin's premium data to calculate high-frequency intraday and end-of-day indices for a wide range of index products. BNC's custom indices help you to gain exposure to the crypto assets class and track your performance against the market without having to become a stock picker. Not sure what you need? A Brave New Coin consultant can help you assess your requirements. Contact BNC today to find out more.
All right, we're back and I'm with Bill Ottman. Bill is the CEO and the founder, really, of the Minds social network, Web3 powered, privacy enabled, sort of open source platform. Yeah. Bill, I like to finish each podcast with a quick round of rapid fire crypto conversation hot takes. Are you up for it?
Let's do it.
Just want kind of quick, snappy answers, Bill, but look, please be as opinionated as you wish. Yeah, to start with, where would you say that you sit on the Bitcoin maximalist to multi-coin opportunist spectrum?
You know, I actually am going to be publishing an article called the psychological difference between Bitcoin and Ethereum governance. And I interviewed Tim Biko from Ethereum core developer, and also Samuel Dobson, who's a Bitcoin core developer. And I'm fascinated by this. I think that, you know, I'm definitely not a maximalist, but I love Bitcoin and I love Ethereum. I think they're both unique and necessary. And I just think when you look at the history of technology, you know, maximalist thinking has never been how it goes. I mean, maximalist thinking is what is what executives who say, oh, you know, we don't need telephones, or, you know, we don't need cars because we have horses. And I'm not saying that Bitcoin is a horse and Ethereum is a car. I think that they're totally unique. They have different product market fits. And so, yeah, but I'm fascinated in it. I want to bridge the divide. Quite frankly, I think that most Bitcoiners are not maximalists by far. I think that even Bitcoin core developers are not all maximalists. So this idea that the maximalists are this huge contingency, I think they're very loud.
Yeah, makes sense, Bill. Thank you for that. Well, what would you say then is your firmest conviction crypto opinion?
That it has to be open source. That if you're working in crypto, do not be scared of someone stealing your idea, because that is just not how it works in reality. I understand that fear mentality, but you know, your project will spread naturally on its own merits. There's very novel licenses you can use, like Uniswap rolled out a time-delayed GPL so that people can't fork for a couple of years, but it's still all open and transparent. We use the AGPL v3, which is you know, more copy left, but there's options. And so, yeah, that's my biggest conviction. I don't want to see proprietary closed source crypto.
Makes sense. I like that, Bill. Here's an interesting one for you. Shadow banning on social media, or shadow banning on Twitter. Is this a thing? Is it a myth? Is it a conspiracy, or is it real?
Well, we don't know, do we? Because we can't see the code. So I would say that we know that there are very complex algorithms. So I would say that, and honestly, based on a lot of the leaked documents from Google and Facebook, yeah, it's definitely real.
Okay.
We don't know specifically all of the different variables and how they're shadow banning, but absolutely. I mean, Minds actually was on a blacklist on Facebook, which we luckily got reversed because we knew somebody who could help us, and we think we were wrongfully put on it. But there was a period for like 6 months where anytime you posted a link on a Minds link on Facebook, that you would get this big like warning, and you had to do a CAPTCHA, and it was just like that hurt us a lot, I'm sure. I mean, a lot of people who saw that were probably like, eek, don't want to go here. So, you know, we got onto some list, and luckily we got off, but again, most people won't be able to get off. So I think that shadow banning is just unacceptable.
Yeah, fascinating. Okay, well, Bill Gates famously said that we tend to overestimate what we can accomplish in 2 years and underestimate what we can accomplish in 10. So I guess whatever you like here, but, you know, kind of thinking of social media, but in a Web3 form. What does it look like in 10 years' time?
Yeah, I think we're going to, I actually agree with that timing sentiment. I think that we're going to be pretty much at parity with current functionality on Web 2 in Web 3 in 10 years. And nice. So meaning that you'll be able to be on Web 3 without really thinking about it. You're going to have all of the bells and whistles.
Makes a lot of sense. That's a good way to frame it. Similarly, Bill, William Gibson famously said that the future is already here. It's just not evenly distributed. Can you think of an example of the future being here right now, but most people just aren't really aware of it?
I love that quote, and I love William Gibson. But I mean, crypto is actually a really good example. Maybe that's the too obvious answer, but I think people who are in Bitcoin and Ethereum and others are just participating in the next financial system, and there is just so much benefit for lifting up. It is the lifeboat for civilization, and yeah, I mean, and it's distributing itself rapidly. So it fits pretty well.
I could not agree more, Bill. Okay, well, time to zoom out, time to get a little bit weird. What do you see as the long-term future for the human race? Do you see dystopia or utopia?
It'll be a mix. I think that those words are, we're both. And I think that life is both. There's times when we feel like we're in a utopia and times when we feel like dystopia. And, in those times, there's dystopian things happening on the other side of the world while we're in our own little utopia. So I think that we're seeing decentralized open source technology eat the internet. And I want to see the whole global infrastructure, even beyond the internet, like energy systems, transportation systems, grids, everything become open source and decentralized as much as makes sense. There's always going to be a place for some centralized infrastructure. But yeah, I think that we need to get all of the different layers of sort of the global operating system onto transparent systems. And that will just have massive economic benefit for everybody.
Nice. I love it. All right. Let's start to finish this off, Bill. Finally, what is your favorite science fiction book, film, TV show, or universe?
I would probably have to say Brave New World. There's so many quotes. I just keep reading it. It has this kind of combination of utopia and dystopia, which you were just talking about. And, there's this book by Neil Postman called Entertaining Ourselves to Death or something along those lines. Yes. And it really talks about how, Orwell thought that,
I've got the quote here, Bill.
You've got the quote there. Okay, wow.
Orwell feared those who would deprive us of information. Huxley feared those who would give us so much that would be reduced to passivity. And
how do you have that on hand?
Because I've just Googled it because I'm familiar with it.
Nice.
Orwell feared that the truth would be concealed from us. Huxley feared that the truth would be drowned in a sea of irrelevance. So it's because I love this idea as well. It's 1984 on one side and Brave New World on the other side, but they both depict completely opposite dystopias, but it's the same thing, right? And the world, fascinatingly, the world is a mix of those two dystopias, and a little bit right now. It's just different parts of the world are going in those different directions. Yeah. All right. I like that. I love that. Good place to finish, Bill. Nothing else to say really, except to hand the metaphorical microphone back to yourself. Look, give a final shout out for Minds and where people should go, why they should come and engage on the platform.
Yeah, come to Minds. You can find me at Ottman, Ottman on Minds, and feel free to hit me up if you're, looking to collaborate or want to get the word out about what you're doing. I guess that's what, yeah, I mean, diversify, I know we're all addicted to big tech. I'm not even innocent. I definitely watch YouTube. But we just need to spend a little bit of time in these new systems, and because that is what feeds the new systems. That's what makes the new systems actually become popular and hit critical mass. You think that just signing in a couple times a week, doesn't make a difference. It actually really does. And so, yeah, thanks for having me.
Awesome. Hey, thanks for coming on. All the best, Bill, and bye for now. All right, there you go. That was Bill Ottman, CEO of Minds. That was a bit of fun. Very much enjoyed chatting to Bill, and I really love that he brought up Brave New World, of course, by Aldous Huxley at the end there. And yeah, that quote that we were both trying to remember and Google. So I've found the better version of it. Yeah, because it's just such a good depiction of the two, contrasting dystopias presented in George Orwell's 1984 and Huxley's Brave New World. But it goes something like this. Orwell feared those who would ban books. Huxley feared that there would be no reason to ban a book because there would be no one who wanted to read one. Orwell feared those who would deprive us of information, whereas Huxley feared those who would give us so much information we could not process it. Orwell feared that the truth would be hidden from us. Huxley feared that the truth would be drowned in a sea of irrelevance. Orwell feared we would become a captive culture. Huxley feared we would become a trivial culture. In 1984, people are controlled by inflicting pain, and in Brave New World, they are, of course, controlled by inflicting pleasure. Yeah, just really insightful. Two possible dystopian futures, and you can very much see, in parts of the authoritarian world today, you've got the kind of the 1984 version of dystopia. And perhaps, you could argue that in the kind of metaverse, content abundant, centralized social media platforms of today, that's very much the Brave New World version of dystopia as we amuse ourselves to death. Just fascinating to see these old dystopian visions from really 50 years ago, more relevant than ever. So, yeah, interesting stuff. All right. Well, I think we'll leave it there for today's show. Hope you enjoyed that. Please do make sure you subscribe to the Crypto Conversation in whatever podcast app you are using. But yeah, that's us for today. We are out of here. This was the Crypto Conversation for Brave New Coin.